Hello, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy. My topics for tonight. I'm Joe Firestone, of course, your host. My topics for tonight are various takes on the Israeli plan. I'm going to straighten my beret, of course. And also Ramaphosa's closing BRICS speech. I have a number of takes, on the Israeli plan. That, of course, refers to the document that was leaked. There are various stories about who leaked it. Some people think it was somebody in the United States government who leaked it because they were trying to put a stop to the progression towards a Third World War. And some think, therefore, that was the motivation. Anyway, I have three takes for you tonight, and of course I have my own take also, which is the fourth take. And the three takes are by Scott Ritter first, and Colonel Douglas McGregor, and Colonel Larry Wilkerson as well. So three wonderful commentators, in their analyses. And then, of course, I'll wind up that segment of the show with my own analysis, as well. So I see a few of you are here, already, a little more than a few of you. Hi, Lana. So I'll get right into this. We have Scott's take, in the form of an article. From his Substack, Scott Ritter Extra. It's called The Israeli Intelligence Leak, an ugly glimpse into a dark future. And this was done on October 23rd, 2024. Here is a picture of an Israeli F-16I fighter, which of course is an F-16 with some modifications. And one of the modifications was, in this case, in the photo, Iraq's ALBM. An ALBM is an air-launched ballistic missile. And, of course, it's painted orange. And it's mounted on the Israeli F-61 fighter. That has a number of armaments on it, but one of the armaments is an ALBM. So Scott starts off, whoever leaked the documents provided a crystal ball that shows what could be. It is the job of the American people to make sure it never is. The leaking of two highly classified documents, which upon examination appear to contain sensitive U.S. intelligence information about Israeli military preparations for an attack on Iran, has created a storm of controversy in the United States. As U.S. law enforcement scrambles to discover the source of the leak, very little concern is being expressed by U.S. politicians or the American public at large over the implications, not of the leaked documents, but rather the information they contained, that Israel is preparing a massive strike on Iran that could trigger a larger conflict, which realistically could end up involving the use of nuclear weapons. Here I'm going to recall to you my last stream on Tuesday night, which contended that the Israelis' delay in their attack created a situation which would make it easier, okay, for the United States to avoid getting into a war with Iran. That specifically, we're getting so close to the election now that it would be possible for the government of the United States to avoid pressure to join up with the Israelis in a common effort against Iran, if they only waited to make a decision on it, okay, until after the election. Well, that is not a factor that Scott is considering here. So I want to be clear about that. Going on, according to the leaked intelligence documents, Israel was preparing some 40 rocks ALBMs for a possible strike against Iran, along with 16, quote, Golden Horizon ALBMs, which appeared to be what is known as the, quote, Blue Sparrow, unquote, missile, an adaptation of a target missile developed by Israel to mimic the Iranian Shahab-3 ballistic missile. The rocks has a demonstrated range of more than 500 miles, while the, quote, Blue Sparrow Golden Horizon has a range of around 1,200 miles. Of course, we have to be clear that when considering the total range available to the Israelis, you have to also consider the range of the F-16s. So you would add 500 miles to the one-way range of the F-16s, and then that would certainly be enough of a range for the Israelis to attack Iran, while certainly the Blue Sparrow Golden Horizon missiles would have a range, that when added to the F-16s, could certainly get the attack of the Israelis to Iran. Going on with Scott's article, the daily airstrikes carried out by Israel over Lebanon and Syria provide the perfect cover for a strike on Iran. The Israelis are striking Syrian air defense sites in southern Syria daily to create a pattern of behavior, while at the same time carving a path through Syrian airspace that can be used by Israeli aircraft to penetrate the western part of Iraq, from which long-range ALBMs can be launched against Iran. I take it that the long-range ALBM here is the Blue Sparrow Golden Horizon. I think they probably have to go still farther than the western part of Iraq to get sufficiently close for the rocks, short-range ballistic missiles to be effective against Iran. I may be mistaken about that. This appears to be the tactic used by Israel on April 19th of this year, when an Israeli strike package that bombed 2 Syrian air defense locations in southern Syria went on to enter Iraq and fire 3 probable rocks ALBMs against an Iranian S-300 air defense battery outside of Isfahan. Okay. So evidently the rocks was able to reach the area, of Isfahan. The ROCKS ALBM uses a, quote, Blue Sparrow, unquote, booster, one of which was found in a field south of Baghdad following the attack. An assessment of the missile mix being prepared suggests that Israel is preparing for a major attack against a major military production facility in the vicinity of Tehran. The Parchin missile production facility comes to mind, as well as the Shahed Hamat Industrial Group, or more likely a decapitation strike against Iranian leadership targets in and around Tehran. The ALBM attacks would be supported by armed cover drones, which could be used to track mobile targets in real time and engage, if necessary, using onboard weapons. By way of comparison, the attack conducted by the United States on the opening day of Operation Desert Storm against the 8 Iraqi targets in the vicinity of Baghdad used 35 air-launched cruise missiles. Most of these missiles struck the Taji missile production and storage facility north of Baghdad. The weapons mix being prepared by Israel suggests a similar size target package. And here's a photo of Iranian security forces in the streets in September of 2023. Scott goes on, but there is an additional target possibility. In a speech delivered on September 30th, 3 days after Israel killed Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in a 3-minute speech in English addressing the Iranian people, declared that, quote, there is nowhere in the Middle East Israel cannot reach. There is nowhere we will not go to protect our people and protect our country, unquote. Netanyahu noted that the Iranian government was bringing Iranians, quote, closer to the abyss, unquote, adding that Iran and Israel would be at peace only when Iran is, quote, finally free, unquote, something Netanyahu said would, quote, come a lot sooner than people think, unquote. If Tehran is the target, then Israel will need to neutralize Iranian air defense systems along the path of attack. If Israel repeats its past pattern of behavior, a large package of F-15Is, supported by F-16Is, which would suppress Syrian air defenses, would penetrate western Iraq via Syria, and then would enter western Iraq. The initial salvo of ALBMs, most likely ROCKS, would be released, their intended targets being the radars associated with Iranian air defense located along the attack path. The final missiles released would be the, quote, Blue Sparrow, Golden Horizon missiles, unquote, which would strike the targets in and around Tehran. So that's interesting, I guess, because there are, after all, according to the leak, only some 16 of the Golden Horizon missiles. Is that correct? 40 ROCKS and 16 of the Golden Horizons. Not really that many, by the way, when you consider that if Iran attacks Israel, it's going to attack with between 1,000 and 2,000 ballistic missiles. That's a lot more than 56 ballistic missiles, I am compelled to point out. So, Here is a picture of the supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, with Iranian military and IRGC leadership, and they're walking along, also saluting, with the Ayatollah using his cane a step or two ahead. These targets could include the residences of senior Iranian leadership targets, including the supreme leader, as well as buildings associated with the symbols of government, such as the Guardian Council, the Ministry of Intelligence, the IRGC headquarters, and other targets identified as being supporters of the Islamic Republic. IRGC stands for, of course, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. Iran would probably follow up such an attack with an appeal to the Iranian people to revolt against the regime. This appeal would be done in concert with actions undertaken by anti-regime entities operating at the direction of Israel, the United States, and other regional actors. These would include pro-monarchy groups, the MEK, which is a terrorist group, and various Kurdish, Azeri, Baloch, and Arab independence movements. Israel, the CIA, and other foreign intelligence organizations hostile to Iran attempted a similar revolt against the Iranian government in September 2023, following the death of Mahsa Amini while in police custody. What started as localized demonstrations exploded into outright insurrection, which took the lives of some 550 protesters, insurgents, and nearly 70 Iranian security personnel before being violently suppressed. And here is an announcement from the Eisenhower Media Network and U.S. Tour of Duty, which, of course, is the show of Scott Ritter, and Jeff Norman. This announces a brunch at the Tudor City Steakhouse in New York City on Sunday, October 27th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. You can get some tickets and info at scottritter.com. And what's going to be going on at the steakhouse is some panel discussions. Participants will include Jimmy Dore, Scott Ritter, Judge Napolitano, also Randy Credico and Russell Dobular, Dennis Fritz, Danny Haifong, Garland Nixon, Jeff Norman, Diane Sarah, Jose Vega, and Larry Wilkerson. The organizers of the event were Jose Vega and Diane Sarah. Jose Vega, in case people don't know, is running for Congress. He's running for Congress in one of the districts that involve a part of New York City. And the incumbent he's running against is Richie Torres. Jose Vega, is running as an independent, I believe. Anyway, the event will contain moderated panel discussions, the threat of nuclear war in the world today, which will be moderated by Scott Ritter, and the assault on free speech, saving democracy, which will be moderated by Jose Vega. Going on with the article, Israel would be looking to repeat this kind of insurrection but this time helping it by preemptively dealing a fatal blow to the Iranian leadership. The odds of Israel being able to pull such a decapitation strike off are slim. Likewise, given the recent suppression of anti-regime groups by the Iranian government, it is unlikely the Israeli government are hoping will revolt against the Iranian regime have reconstituted themselves in any meaningful manner. Moreover, by focusing on a decapitation strike, Israel will have done little to prevent Iran from launching its own massive retaliation attack on Israel. Perhaps the Israeli leadership believes that once it takes out the senior-most levels of Iranian leadership, the resolve to strike back will wane. It's a heavy gamble, however, and Israel risks suffering existential threats of damage from any concerted Iranian retaliatory strike. And I add here, such as the threatened 1,000 to 2,000 ballistic missile strike, which the Iranians had threatened the Israelis with just after the attack on October 1st. But U.S. intelligence indicated that Israel's nuclear deterrence capability in the form of its Jericho missiles were not being readied for action. This, however, would not be the case if Iran launched missile attacks against Israel that threatened its very existence. This is the very scenario that the Israeli, quote, Jericho option, unquote, i.e. nuclear weapons capability, was created for. The fact is, if Israel launches a decapitation strike against Iran, it would likely fail. The Iranian counterstrike, however, will be very much on target, and the Israeli nuclear retaliation at that point becomes probable. Scott notes that Americans should let this sink in as we ponder the meaning of the leaked intelligence documents. If the purpose of the leak was to wake the American people, and by extension the American government, up about the danger posed by an Israeli strike against Iran, so far it appears that mission has failed. In that case, we will reap what we have sown. Wake up, America, says Scott. It's your future. Okay, that is on the line. So, one comment I have about this article is that it did not try to explain the alternative possibility that instead of using the strategy here, okay, of launching missiles from F-15 and F-16Is, that what Israelis might do is to use an attack spearheaded by the F-35s, which of course would have to be refueled, okay, in midair to get to Iran. So maybe the Israelis aren't considering that kind of alternative attack. Perhaps they're only considering this one with the F-15s and F-16s and the ALBMs. That would probably make more sense because their planes would not be as vulnerable. Okay. On the other hand, now the Iranians have the S-400 air defense systems that were given to them by the Russians very recently. It's likely the Russians are going to be manning those systems, and that makes it far less likely that the Iranian planes, whether F-16s and F-15s, or whether F-35s, are going to get through. In other words, it makes an attack far less likely. If that's so, and if it's also so that they're not considering, using any of their nuclear capability, it follows that the level of devastation wrought by these 56 missiles is likely to be far less than the level of devastation wrought by the Iranian missiles. That gives the Iranians, an opening in terms of managing the ladder, of escalation, because they may decide then not to retaliate with uh, 2,000 missiles, not to retaliate with a strike which would knock out Israel completely, but retaliate instead with another missile strike of maybe 200 missiles or 400 missiles or something like that, primarily directed against the military targets again inside of Israel. That is, the Iranians might look to managing the ladder of escalation in hopes that the United States would be able to restrain the Israelis from any more escalations. I'm sure Scott has thought of this possibility, but he does not mention it here, probably because his purpose is to warn of the danger of a nuclear war. There certainly is a danger, but I'm raising the possibility of, is it possible for Iran to manage the ladder of escalation so that the Israelis do not immediately go to nuclear war? I don't know. It seems to me the clock is very important here, the election clock, as well. The Israelis might be motivated to go to a heavier attack the first time in order to cause the Iranians to use a very, very heavy counterattack, because the Israelis then would try to use that as leverage to bring the United States in before Election Day. In my last stream, I outlined why I thought that time was getting very short for the Israelis here. I point out now that there are now not 14 days left. There are only 12 days left. Unless the Israelis are attacking right now, we'll be down to 11 days to go tomorrow, which means the clock is running out even faster if Israel's aim is to cause the Iranians to launch a heavy enough attack that there is considerable pressure on the United States to join with Israel in retaliating, in retaliating against Iran. Also, I have to add, if I'm the Iranians, what I might want to do in case of an Israeli strike, of any kind, is to launch my 2,000 ballistic missiles or 3,000 ballistic missiles or any number of ballistic missiles to throw at the Israelis in hopes of not only bringing down the infrastructure, the water system, the electrical power system, all of the military capability of the Israelis, and God, knows what else, to simply deep six the government of Israel and the architecture, of government. Whether the Iranians can do that or not depends on how many ballistic missiles they have. We know they certainly have enough to knock out the air defense systems of Israel completely, and also to damage the airports in such a way that the Israelis would not have any place to take off from. Well, there are many other options and possibilities I don't have time to discuss here, but it seems to me the Iranians would have a heavy incentive on the one hand to manage the escalation, but a heavy incentive, on the other end to just throw everything they have at the Israelis, at this point, in hopes of knocking them out completely. So, I'm going to go on with the next take on the situation, while, of course, taking a look at your comments. First of all, I also note that I did not share this. It was kindly shared by Dee on Facebook, and I thank you, Dee, for sharing. But I'd like to share it myself also, in hopes that I can invite a few others to come and join us. This will just take me another second or two, I think. Yes. So that's that. Okay, so people greet each other, and Steve says, support Jose Vega, everybody. Yeah, Steve and I completely agree on that. Support Jose Vega. He's a great candidate. Lana says, Russell Dobular, puke. The rest sound interesting. That's interesting. Steve says, support Jose Vega, everybody. And Lana says, Jose Vega, he's the one who often interrupts regular Army Dem town halls, etc., right? He is that guy. Lana says, I am okay. Got a lot done today. Just started raining pretty steady about an hour ago. Trees are pretty with the leaves turning. Yes, they are. And that's going on here right now, too. But I don't know if we're going to get any rain here to water the trees. This week is supposed to be very fair, the whole week. Actually, a beautiful week with temperatures in the 60s and the 70s. And Steve answers Lana and says, Lana, yes, he's running as an independent for Congress in the Bronx and New York City. The guy he's running against is Richie Torres, who is notorious for all the money he's taken from AIPAC and related sources from the Israeli lobby. Lana says, I wonder if the average Israeli resident is tired of this already. I don't know. I suspect they're panicked. Steve says, Jose called me personally to thank me for a small donation. Respect. And Lana says, wow, yeah. Jose strikes me as someone who has boundless energy, and boundless guts, as well. This is one upset I am really hoping for. Jose Vega. Okay, getting on to the next piece.
What happens when they're shot at? What happens when they're killed?
Okay, so that is Judge Napolitano, of course, and he's questioning Colonel McGregor. We're 12:57 into the podcast. I'm going to sort of skip around a little in order to get Doug's take, okay, on uh, the Israeli raid. Okay, so the judge has just asked the question: the THAADs, were delivered to Israel, and they raised the possibility that the 100 soldiers that was sent over to tend each of the THAAD systems. What happens if they get killed? By some attacks by Hezbollah or Iran, or the Houthis, or the other enemies of Israel, and Doug is about to answer that question. As soon as the buffering ends, that is.
By incoming Iranian missile fire. The Mike Turners of the world will say it's time for troops on the ground to attack Iran. They attack
exactly. From Netanyahu's standpoint, that's music to his ears. Please, by all means, remember in 1914, or actually it was before 1914, it was about 1912, after the Entente was stupidly formed between Great Britain and France, two countries that had been in each other's throats for hundreds of years. And I think it was the prime minister at the time, Asquith, he asked the president of France, how many soldiers do you want us to send, and how soon do they need to be there in the event of a German war with France? He said, just send us one.
Okay, you'll notice the notices on the screen informing us of the copyright here. Okay, Judge Knapp, of course, doesn't want people to violate the copyright. But I believe what I'm doing here is I'm playing parts of the video with commentary. So this is like a quotation. In other words, it's analogous to a quotation from a book, and from an article, and doing commentary on the quotation or a number of them. That's something that adds value to the content, and that is legal from the standpoint of a copyright law. So that, of course, is what I have been doing with these videos, and that is what I will continue to do. And as I say, I believe that kind of activity is perfectly legal. What I think this copyright notice is aimed at is there are these videos that are coming out, and they're taking the whole video, from the judge's program, and they're supplementing it with music and with backgrounds of different kinds, and only showing the head of Colonel McGregor. But basically quoting the whole video, not really commenting on it in any way or adding value to that content, in any way by doing any commentary. And so I think that's what Judge Knapp is intending to stop. I don't think he's intending to stop the kind of use of the video that I am making here. So from time to time, we'll see the copyright notice.
We'll send him as far forward as possible and ensure that he is immediately killed. Well, his point was, we're not worried about that. We want you in the war. Britain had almost no army to speak of, but its massive industrial power made a huge difference, as did its navy. You have a similar situation now. Get these people on the ground in Israel. You have this radar, which is $500 million a piece. You've got two of them now, I suspect. I don't know if they've got a second one coming.
I'm going to take just 1 minute to explain why your contribution right now is so important.
I can't help the insertion of those ads, of course. I cannot cut them. But, not unless I edited the whole video, which is beyond my capacity.
I suspect they will. That's a target. As soon as it radiates, it radiates on a scale that we can't even describe. You put a human being in front of it for a few minutes, the human being will be fried. So this thing is going to emit. It's going to be a huge target. And the Iranians are going to have great difficulty avoiding its destruction. They're going to have to take it and destroy it. And this is unavoidable. That's what Netanyahu wants. The real question is when the news comes out that we are now officially at war with Iran, if it ever does come out, what will the American people do? I don't know.
Well, getting back to your analogy in 1912, Colonel, are not these 200 American troops effectively tripwire?
Of course. But there are only 257,000 who are already in the region. Many of these distributed in small pockets in forward operating bases in Syria and Iraq, Jordan. Will these be targets? Most certainly. I'm sure they probably will be, although I'm sure the priority targets may be other things, our aircraft carriers, air bases, obviously anything that can be targeted that launches missiles or aircraft.
Okay, to comment on that, I've read that we seem to be giving right now various assurances to the Iranians that we will not facilitate the coming Israeli attack on Iran. The THAAD systems don't really facilitate that. They're about the defense against the retaliation that Iran has threatened, against any Israeli first strike at this point. Okay, so supposedly the kind of talking that's going on back channel is that if we refrain from helping the Israeli strike, on Iran, the trade-off is that in return, the Iranians won't try to attack the 257,000 troops that we have stationed in various bases inside of the Middle East or on carriers or in other situations. So there's a trade-off that's going on here, and it's not expected that at first there would be the killing, of any Americans. This is also true with respect to the THAAD systems, because we're talking about the situation in which there isn't a counterstrike by the Iranians. Though I point out that the possibility of the killing of American troops is still there because Hezbollah might try to attack THAAD systems, okay, that are there, and that might kill the 200 American soldiers that are there to tend, okay, the THAAD systems. What Hezbollah chooses to do is not under the complete control, okay, of Iran. They're independent actors, and I have to add that right now they are delivering often hundreds of missiles per day right now. Well, not only missiles, combination of missiles, rockets, and drones, 200 every day to Israel. Now, not only attacking military targets and military bases, but also Haifa, okay, and Tel Aviv, and even some points to the south of that. Hezbollah is getting very, very active. The Houthis, okay, are active again, sending very long-range missiles, okay, to Israel. And so those 200 American soldiers might be hostage to that, even though a major attack on the U.S. bases by Iran, for the time being, is not in the offing. So there's something of a tripwire there that Doug is not talking about. Going further.
So yeah, this is obvious, and people should be very concerned about it because you're now talking about a war that will spread very rapidly, and I hope we'll get to that in a second.
The documents that were revealed on the website Telegram, which have all the earmarks of being legitimate American top secret documents, revealed a couple of things: that American intel spies on the Israelis, probably no news to the people in the business; that American intel does not share everything with the other four eyes of the Five Eyes, probably nothing news to those in the business; that American intel casually refers to the Israeli nuclear weapons program, something not supposed to be acknowledged in an American document or by an official of the United States. What is your view of the significance of the release of these documents, whether it involves these aspects that I've mentioned or something that I have failed to mention?
Well, first of all, these documents don't tell Iran anything that the Iranians haven't already figured out. And I'm sure they've been through many, many scenarios. Iran is a sophisticated state. They can think through these things as carefully and effectively as anybody. So I don't think it was ever meant for Iran. I think whoever leaked this was probably leaking it to inform the American people of what's actually going to happen. There are still lots of people, I run into them all the time, and say, oh, well, Netanyahu will never strike Iran. This is never going to happen. And we have to understand that he very definitely is going to strike Iran. He has no choice. He's taken unsustainable losses against Hezbollah in the north. He's still taking losses inside Israel from Gaza.
Everybody is talking about this innovative tiny air pump for drivers with its 120 psi power.
Sorry about that.
This is not getting any better. The only thing he's got left, the only play that is available to him at this point, is to start a major war with Iran and then await the Iranian response. knowing that that will bring in the United States. We're obligated. We already said we are going to defend Israel. Well, defending Israel really involves offensive operations by U.S. forces against Iran, which is what he wants. So these things are going to happen. It's inevitable. I shouldn't say inevitable, but largely unavoidable. Let's put it that way.
Well, what do you think?
Okay, so Doug is very clear about that. He doesn't see the current administration as stopping Israel, okay, at some point. If Israel goes through with its threat to retaliate for October 1st, okay, and they do retaliate. Doug here is not talking about any nuances like, how successful, okay, is the retaliation? Will the Iranians seek to, manage the escalation, okay, in any way? He's not also directly speaking about the circumstances involving the election, the 12 days that, still remain. Okay, and whether the United States might simply decide, okay, in the case of an Israeli attack, okay, and an answer by Iran, might simply decide to wait out the time, until the election, and make a decision after the election as to what it's going to do. If the United States should do that, then the Biden administration has more freedom, of course, to say no to Israel. It's also true that the power of the lobby is at its weakest right after an election. In other words, that's the time when, for at least for a little while, people are not looking for further money. It's the time when the lobby is least able to bully them. It's the time when they're least able to bully the presidency, okay, as well. And especially since Biden's a lame duck, okay, not simply a lame duck, he's been one already, but after the election, the only stake he might have is the stake in making the right call for the United States. I don't think he'll have any stake at that point in protecting the interests of Israel versus protecting the interests of the United States. So I think following the election, he has the maximum amount of freedom to make a good call. So let's go on a little bit more with this.
Think will happen next that will produce a wider war?
I think that several things are going on. First of all, let's look at it regionally. People aren't paying attention to what's happening in Syria. I think we're involved, along with Mossad, in stirring up the Kurds against the Turks. This is designed to warn Erdogan that if he and his government are considering supporting anyone against Israel, that they'll have a major war on their southern border or southeastern border. Frankly, the Turks can cope with that, and I think they'd probably welcome the opportunity to go in and annihilate the PPK and anybody that stands in their way in northern Iraq. For a very long time, the Turks have been arguing that northern Iraq is really Turkish territory, and that the Kurds and Turkomans that live there should be inside Anatolia. That's an easy thing to happen, but it's not going to stop the Turks if there's a decision to enter the war otherwise from going in. But this puts Syria into play. The Israelis have been pushing us for a long time against Assad. And we've discussed this before as well. Assad was, the lesser of all the evils and a force of stability there, but the Israelis have always wanted him gone. The Russians have stood by Assad, and they're not going to give up their bases on the Mediterranean. So all of these forces are coming into play right now in very ominous ways. Now, how does this become a regional war? And by the way, before we move on, a lot of money is starting to show up from Saudi Arabia in the bank accounts of Egypt. In other words, the National Bank. I think that's going to happen in Jordan. And I think the Saudis and the Emirates are sending money saying, you don't have to be dependent upon the United States and the West.
Is the resistance growing?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody is on board. It's just that not everybody has the military power to respond. So they're responding in whatever ways they can. And that's why I was talking about the Peninsular Arabs who can finance Egypt and Jordan. And this is the biggest problem that King Abdullah faces. And for that matter, General Sisi. How do I move forward and have some solidarity with the rest of the Islamic world if I go under financially in the meantime? So they're saying, no, that's not going to happen. BRICS is very important right now. Xi said that it is absolutely essential that we move past the dollar, that we stop using it. Everybody who's at that conference understands that's where things are headed. This is the new parallel system. Now, back to what is the ultimate firecracker that blows this thing up, and that is Israel's strike against Iran. Now, we've had all sorts of articles come out in the Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal saying, oh, well, the Israelis have agreed to do this or not agreed to do that. If we understand anything, we should understand this.
Please sign the petition and urge Congress to make
Mr. Netanyahu continues to exert far more influence and power in Washington than anybody in the government today. He is going to do whatever the hell he wants to do. Let's be frank. He's going to do it. And you've got a President Trump has said he'll underwrite it. Kamala has tried to burnish her pro-Israeli credentials, but I think the Israelis are very suspicious of her, and I think they want very much for Donald Trump to win, and their agents in the United States are pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into the Trump campaign to make that happen. But if you're sitting where Netanyahu is right now, you really have an incentive to launch your strike before the election.
So I thought you should hear that, and you should hear the subtleties, okay, the analysis, the consideration, for Turkey's position, okay, and what Turkey might do. Okay, also the financial support that's going to Egypt and perhaps to Jordan to encourage them to stand in solidarity with the rest of the Arab world and to bring people together against Israel, to resist Israel. All that implies, of course, that Israel, is in real trouble. On the other hand, that gives the Israelis great incentive to bring the United States into the war and to motivate that before the elections occur. And yet, it's only 12 days before the election, and the Israelis still haven't gone through, with this attack going on.
You want to get this war underway, so regardless of whomever wins, they're stuck with fighting it. So that's where you get the regional war. And once we go after Iran, that brings in Russia. Russia has already got thousands of people on the ground in Iran. They're working feverishly to build everything that is required for Iran's defenses, but also to help the Iranians with regard to missiles and warheads and so forth. This is the beginning. Once he strikes Iran, that's your regional war, boundless, unlimited, no stopping it.
Does Russia?
So, okay, I'm going to cut this off here. But you see how Doug feels about this. He's very unhappy. He believes whether there is a war or not, okay, in the Middle East, a general war or not in the Middle East, depends on what Netanyahu does and whether he attacks before the election, okay, is finished. He doesn't think that whether there is a regional war uh, uh, is up to Biden, or at least he's not willing to grant that there's any good possibility that Biden would stop it. From lots of other streams that Colonel McGregor has done, you can see that he has very little respect for the Biden administration. Given the actions of the Biden administration in the Middle East, cutting a blank check to Israel for so long, the actions of the Biden in the administration in the Ukraine war, okay, and it's very, very, very bad behavior there, and essentially provoking a war that has resulted in 600,000 fatalities on the part, okay, of Ukraine, and the denuding of population from Ukraine. Doug is one of those who believes that there are only 18 million people left in Ukraine, okay, at this point. He has extreme lack of respect for the policy of the United States, both in Ukraine, okay, and in Israel. So okay, I wanted to emphasize that and to have you hear him say what he thinks, okay, is going to happen. So let me now go on with the third piece I have for you to keep on painting the picture that I'm trying to paint here. And this is another of Judge Knapp's pieces. Excuse the ad. Okay, this is some of an interview by Judge Knapp with Larry Wilkerson. Hopefully the buffering will stop soon. I
Create.
Now, it has no chance of achieving any kind of reasonable objective. And this is going to play out, I am sad to say.
Colonel, what in your view is the significance of the release on the Telegram website of the two top secret American intel documents showing a couple of things? Israel, what purports to be Israel's plans to invade Iran, the American intelligence community spying on Israel, the American intelligence community not sharing everything with the other four eyes of the five eyes, and the rather in passing reference to the universal recognition of Israel's possession of nuclear weapons on an official U.S. government document.
So the judge again emphasizes that because he's very concerned about the violation of law by the United States government. It's acknowledging now in official documents that Israel has a nuclear capability, but is not conforming, with the anti-proliferation treaty. Since that's the case, it's against the law for the United States to provide any aid to Israel at all. So what's been going on is that this administration in the United States has clearly been breaking the law, and here's the evidence of it. It's acknowledging in the document that it knows that Israel has a nuclear capability. So that's the motivation of the question from the judge's side.
I think my view on that is fairly fixed, and it is that we did it. We did it just as we did Nord Stream. We leaked this. You will never see a whistleblower. There will never be a Dan Ellsberg. There'll never be anybody punished. They'll make all kinds of movements as if that were going to take place, Justice and others, FBI. But we leaked it, and we leaked it for a number of reasons, one of which was, and I'm not so sure I'm against this reason, to discourage Israel from doing anything in the time between now and the 5th of November.
So that's a different interpretation than Doug McGregor had, and then Scott Ritter had. In other words, they think this was leaked by someone not acting as part of the administration, someone who may be in the administration, but someone who was acting as a rogue player to try to stop a war. Here's Larry saying that he believes this was leaked deliberately by the government to try to stop the Israelis from attacking until after November 5th. Now that is very interesting. I have to point out here that I believe that Larry Wilkerson, Colonel Wilkerson, has better contacts still inside of the government than either Colonel McGregor, or Scott Ritter. I think that people in the Defense Department still talk to Larry Wilkerson, and that he knows better what is going on inside the Defense Department than the other two commentators. I may be wrong about that, but that is my judgment.
And to send a signal to that effect that if they did, we would punish them. And I don't know how that punishment would play out, but I could think of a few ways to do it.
Is this well, let me ask you a little background. Is this a subterfuge? That is, was this leaked in order to give the Iranians false information, or was this real? And if so, does it force a delay on the plans of the Netanyahu government?
All the above. And I have no idea without seeing the specific contents of the documents and comparing it with other things that I have access to, I have no idea how to say a positive answer to your question about what does it do to the Iranians, other than to show to the Iranians, and I think they probably are aware of this, that we will do anything in our power to stop anything from happening before the elections. After the elections, all bets are off. And I think the Iranians know that.
I think that commentary by Larry is very, very astute. Very astute. The Biden administration will do anything to put off this decision until after November 5th. Now, after November 5th, he says all bets are off. What he means by all bets are off is we don't know what decision of the administration would be, but previously he said, okay, if the Israelis go ahead with the retaliation in a way we don't like, he can think of ways to punish them. And of course, he thinks the Biden administration can think of ways to punish them too. I can think of ways to punish them. I mean, a good way to punish them is just to say, hey, you guys, sorry, we warned you against a retaliation that was going to be too heavy, on Iran, and that was going to make very, very clear that they had to retaliate, against you. Okay, but you went ahead anyway, and you tried to drag us into the war. We run our foreign policy. You don't run our foreign policy. What we're saying to you now is that you made your bed, and now you have to sleep in it. We're not going to defend you anymore. We'll call for peace. We'll call for a ceasefire. We'll try to support a ceasefire. But at long last, you're going to have to come to the table. We are not going to support your greater Israel vision any longer. That stops right here. That's the way you could really punish Israel.
Here's Ayatollah Ali Khamenei yesterday with harshly critical comments about the culture of the West.
They're called bionic boomers, seniors once riddled with debilitating arthritis pain, given a new lease on life thanks to
I am pretty healthy, but
Cut number one.
I'm not a bionic boomer.
Western politicians have been disgraced. Western policy has been exposed. They have failed. This is a major defeat. No one should speak of the Western civilization anymore. This is Western civilization. It doesn't care about taking money from its own people in all sorts of ways and sending it to kill small children, innocent offspring, destroy families, and martyr 10,000 children, leaving thousands orphaned. It doesn't matter to them. This is Western culture.
Empty words, or is he going to do something about it?
Well, he's someone to be saying those things. He was the one who cracked down on the women in Iran when they tried to gain a little bit of power recently, if you recall.
Right.
So, his words of philosophy, as it were, don't mean a whole hell of a lot to me. But there's enough truth in what he said. Just as there is resonating truth in, and far more of it, what Putin says and what other leaders arrayed around Putin say about the empire to be real and damaging. Let's just face it. We have supported now for a year slaughter of human beings on a scale not seen since Adolf Hitler and World War II. We, the American empire, the supposed humanitarian protector of the world, we have supported it. And we've had our Secretary of State there 11 times to lie about it. You can't miss the truth in that.
I want to go back to the Telegram revelation.
Okay, I think I'm going to skip here, okay, but I wanted to point out how strong that was, okay, from Larry, and how heartfelt it was. He is sick of the genocide, sick of the support that this administration is giving to the genocide, and aware of the truth in much of what the Ayatollah and Putin have to say about what we've been doing. And he could have added the Chinese, okay, as well. Okay. And he's really, really exercised by it. I want to skip ahead at this point to the end. Okay. Oh, sorry.
Gets completely out of hand, and the United States has no choice but to come in.
Oh, hey, Colonel, what are you doing Sunday morning?
We're going up to meet with a lot of our friends, a lot of true patriots, I think, and we're getting ready to talk about all the things that are impacting us right now in an adverse way. And I think one of the focuses, at least talking to Scott Ritter, is going to be on nuclear weapons and how dangerous the situation in the world is right now with regard to.
To my great delight, after nearly 3 years of working with you on a weekly basis, we will finally be in the same room at the same time, and I'll get to give you a big hug.
Well, it'll be a long time since I've seen Scott, too. He just asked me to write the forward to his new book on nuclear weapons, and I told him, and I write it in the forward. Should ask Dan Ellsberg. I know he would have if Dan were still alive.
Of course he would. Colonel, I look forward to seeing you Sunday morning.
Okay, so I thought I should show that part. That was also very important. But I thought Larry had something in his hypothesis that it was the government of the United States that actually released the letters, that it was the government of the United States that wanted to slow down the Israelis until after the election. And that, of course, accords with my hypothesis also that now the government of the United States is able to delay until after the election to give it the freedom to make a decision that it thinks is in the best interest of the United States. Now, I don't know what decision they're going to make. I hope, of course, again, that they're going to tell the Israelis to go sleep in the bed they made. I'm not going to predict, that is going to happen, not after the foreign policy record of this administration thus far. But we can all hope that it's going to happen in that way. And I'm going to take a look at your comments now, and then I want to end the stream with a statement from the president of South Africa, Ramaphosa, that he made in his closing speech, because that is a very, very important speech, as well. But let me entertain some of your comments. I see there were no additional comments, which I regret, of course, but I'm still very happy for the attendance, thus far. And I will now proceed to the last of the videos that I wanted to comment on here tonight. Sorry, I have to bring that video up because this is an 8-minute video.
Your Excellency Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, honorable ministers and excellencies. Allow me to begin by congratulating President Putin on chairing a very successful BRICS summit, as well as leading us all to adopt an excellent declaration from this summit. The BRICS outreach and BRICS Plus engagements are important platforms for developing strong ties amongst countries from greater global south and emerging markets. We should use these platforms to foster meaningful engagement. We should use the BRICS platform to contribute to social, economic, cultural development of our peoples. We welcome the Russian initiatives that are aimed at strengthening a number of BRICS countries through the various measures that they have put on the table, such as transport networks and connectivity. This, in many ways, will help to find ways to integrate and deepen our interconnectedness in new and imaginative ways. The African Continental Free Trade Area will make a huge contribution itself to unlock opportunities for trade and investment for local and global businesses. It will create a number of opportunities that will lead.
Okay, so you saw the exchange there between Putin and Xi, and the interpreter sitting in the middle, and Lavrov writing back of Putin as they're listening to the Ramaphosa speech. But I think what's happening is that she is getting ready to go home, and we'll see some evidence of that in just a minute.
It's to an integrated and connected continent. The single African air transport market is another flagship project of the African Union Agenda 2063. This is an initiative of the African Union to create a single unified air transport market in Africa to support the continent.
Okay, if you saw the activity in the rear there of all those people beginning to leave, I think that those were the Chinese delegation, and that they had probably made some travel arrangements and were starting home. I'm not sure of that, but that was the impression that I had.
Economic integration. For BRICS and friends of BRICS, we need to use these projects to further connect the greater global South. The promotion of greater regional connection.
That was the Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, who attended the BRICS meetings as an observer, of course.
Activity and trade facilitation can only succeed in an environment of peace and stability. Excellencies, South Africa is concerned about the military action by the State of Israel against the people of Gaza, which we have characterized as genocide, is deeply concerning. This genocide led South Africa to approach the International Court of Justice with a view to stopping the killing of innocent women and children in Gaza.
Hello, I'm Martin Sheen with an urgent question. Of course, I'm supporting Kamala Harris 100%, but we
do believe that the world cannot just sit by and watch the slaughter of innocent people continuing. South Africa has been unwavering in its support towards all efforts aimed at the establishment of a viable Palestinian state, existing side by side in peace with Israel, within internationally recognized borders based on the 1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as its capital. And this would be in line with all UN resolutions, international law, and internationally agreed parameters. We do call on the international community and the United Nations Security Council to address this spiraling conflict. On our own continent, Africa, Sudan enters its second year of horrific conflict and devastation. This is another conflict that the world seems to have forgotten about. The protracted conflicts in the Sahel and Great Lakes regions in Africa persist. We must find lasting solutions to all these conflicts. We must remain committed to the peaceful resolution of all disputes through negotiation and inclusive dialogue. And we must safeguard the ability of states to pursue independent foreign policy. And we must safeguard the multilateral system, because it is the cornerstone of international relations that fosters an environment of peace and development. Existing global institutional mechanisms need to be both strengthened and reformed to play a constructive role in the international peace and security. We cannot allow conflicts just to continue in perpetuity. We do need to find paths to peace. In our quest for a long, interconnected, just and prosperous world, We have the ability to foster an environment of peace through a focus on sustainable development. We must also continue to support nations and peoples who seek to end the cycle of conflict and choose the path of peace. I thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. Thank you, Mr. President of South African. South Africa is making a lot for the development of our grouping in order to make sure that the situation in Africa is also developing in a positive way. And now it is my pleasure to pass on the floor to the representative of Brazil.
Okay, so that was that. I thought that was very noticeable. I don't know if I would characterize it as revealing plans to punish Israel, but it did call for action to stop Israel in what it's been doing in Gaza, to stop finally the genocide in Gaza, the attack on Lebanon, and the other actions of the Israelis in violation, of international law. And I think this is really fundamental. And with that, I will consider any final comments. Since there are no final comments, I'm going to say good night. I am going over to Dee's stream now, and I encourage you all to follow me over there because I know she's going to have some very good things to talk about concerning the Middle East, and I promise to do my best in providing very good commentary. Finally, what I want to say about this is that I still like the thoughts I put forward on Tuesday about time being so short now for the Israeli retaliation that what we're looking at is a further delay, hopefully by Iran, but also by the United States, to put off any decision by the United States until after the election, so Biden and his administration will be free to make a decision with minimal interference from the lobbies. And that is very, very important. So good night, everyone. And I will see you over at Dee's, hopefully.